Hey, so I have some sort of a weird guitar lesson type thing for myself. Um, so what I'm doing is essentially I'm not exactly gonna teach myself how to play the songs from my album because I don't exactly write the composition of it. So um, essentially, I'm just kind of improvising it all because I kind of do what makes me feel right. And based on that, that's what I do for each song. And honestly, to be honest with you, I am actually pretty pissed off at myself because I was supposed to work on the album and I was supposed to finish it within this week. Problem is, I left my laptop charger at my parents' place. So there's that. Because I take my laptop with me to basically everywhere because I'm stupid like that. Actually, I had finals this week, so I'm kind of amused at the idea that I take my laptop everywhere. And it's crazy to think about because for the past 6 months I've been working on an album that was like not so much an interpretation, but more so like a muse for my experience in my life, I guess you would say. But the problem is my life has changed a lot since then. And with change comes different exhibitions of emotions. I'm not going to give myself a guitar lesson. I'm just here to ramble, I guess. So, I'm not sure where my life is going because, sorry, like, I don't know why the focus on the camera is really off right now. It's weird. But, yeah, yeah, my life has changed drastically the last week. Um, so yeah, a lot of I'm not sure. Uh, okay, so I guess I should. Well, I suppose I should continue off where I was saying where I want my life to go. Well, mentally in my head while I'm speaking, I guess. Um, so the quality of which I'm studying college at the moment isn't exactly where I want it to be. And the issue with that regard is, truthfully, it's because I am not competent at passing any of my classes. And that usually comes from the aspect that I'm useless and worthless and I hate myself. So there's a bunch of aspects that go in line with the fact that I'm not doing well on my college courses. And one of those is being useless and, not being competent, which would easily lead me to not just procrastinate, because like my entire personality is pretty procrastinating unless it's something that I find genuine enjoyment out of doing. Like, I understand, like, okay, so a lot of my college courses, they're music oriented, and I care about music, like, essentially, like, because it's the driving force of which I proceed to choose my life to lead me on. And I find deep meaning in that. And there's an essential problem with something that you have regarding yourself to create this atmosphere of meaning around it. And then to fall in line with something that goes along with that meaningfulness and then to completely just procrastinate on it and not be obedient to your meaning. And it's strange to think about that. Um, so yeah, the problem with creating an atmosphere for yourself in the regard of being obedient to your meaning because you're codependent on it And because you're codependent on your meaning, you're basically forced into obeying what calls you. And music and writing and thinking deeply just happen to be one of the meanings that I have for myself. And that's not to insult people who don't think as deeply, because when people have simplistic answers to complicated problems, it's really helpful, because when people, or when someone has a detrimental, you know, emotional distress in their life, and then someone comes along and gives them a simplistic answer to every single, like, if you're a deep thinking person, like if you're high in openness, if you're high in openness, then your tendency is to actually think deeply about a given subject. And because you're kind of wired that way, to think deeply, then to have someone come along and say, hey, here's an actual good solution, and you're overcomplicating and overthinking it, and then they provide an actual solution to your problem. The thing with me is I can see that. Like, I can see the simplistic answer along with the complicated overanalyzation of every single aspect of a given, circumstance in somebody's life or my own life. And a lot of the time I don't actually speak up because I'm afraid of, looking like a fool, or, offending somebody that I'm close to, or, not just hurting someone's feelings, but more so like I don't want to face the judgment of feeling like a fool, and the problem with, facing somebody who's having a complicated problem, and they're overcomplicating, and then you come along and you give them a simplistic answer. If you're talking to somebody who's not very agreeable, then they're not gonna listen to you when you tell them, hey, here's a simplistic answer to your complicated problem. Especially if they're really prideful. Like, if they're prideful and they're disagreeable, then they're not gonna listen to you. So, and I've met a lot of disagreeable people in my life. A lot of people that I've met in my life are extremely prideful. Well, not extremely, because when somebody's in extreme pride, you're thinking of, cultural, symbolism of pride. You're thinking of like archetypes like Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, or you're thinking about Mufasa and Lion King, or you're thinking about who else? Who is that? Ganondorf from Legend of Zelda, or the series is called Legend of Zelda, and people have the misconception that Link is named Zelda, and that really annoys me. What was I going with that? People that are very prideful kind of reflect those characters of people that I mentioned in the mythos of our culture. As, I don't want to say it like a society, but more so as a world, because when you think about cultural heads of time, then you think about mythology and religion, and you're thinking about people that you look up to, and you're thinking about CEOs, you're thinking about politicians, or people that are very high in disagreeableness. And it's, or they're low in agreeableness. So that goes along with the idea that when people are disagreeable and you come along with a simplistic answer, they want to overcomplicate the issue. They want to figure out every single aspect of the circumstance, because when you have a tendency to look at every single aspect of something, you use all of that as empirical evidence to bring out a sort of a solution to a circumstance. A simplistic person or a simplistic thinker, the way I perceive it is people they'll use additional points in a given circumstance, and then they'll bring that along with their with what co-aligns with their emotionality. And maybe if someone is high in neuroticism, they'll think of some sort of sacrificial, like decision, I suppose. Because if somebody who is high in neuroticism and they're understanding, or okay, if someone's high in neuroticism and they're high in agreeableness, then they're gonna look at it in a given situation, and they're gonna analyze every single aspect of it, and then they're gonna figure out how to make sure that every single person around them has the most amount of gain out of a situation. So if I'm high in neuroticism and agreeableness, then I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that every decision I make will be for your benefit and not so much mine. And that's exactly how I am. As difficult as for people that know me to believe, I'm actually very high in neuroticism and agreeableness, because I'm basing everything on here from the Big Five personality test, because it's a psychological psychologists, and in the world of psychology, they've almost perfected the idea of a personality. And the studies of a personality, they almost perfected it. In the words of Jordan Peterson himself, because I'm obsessed with him, and now I'm kind of expanding upon what I've learned from Jordan Peterson, and I'm kind of expanding my outward position on what I think of how people function. So yeah, that's my take on it. And if somebody is high in disagreeableness, and there may be somewhere around the mid-range of openness, then if you give them I don't know if they would be high in agreeableness. If they're high in agreeableness, then they're more likely to obviously be more agreeable emotionally and circumstantially, but they'll do everything they can and to make sure they make people around them happy. That's what agreeable people do. So if somebody's mid-range in agreeableness and openness, they're more prone to give out simplistic answers to complicated problems. But if somebody's high, there's different percentiles for this too. Like if somebody's high in openness, there's different variations of that openness. So one of them is intellect, and if somebody's high in intellect, then they'll do the exact same thing. They'll do what a person in high openness does, which is the same branch, and they'll overthink it, but at the same time, since they're low on agreeableness, or they're in the mid-range of agreeableness and neuroticism, then they'll be more likely to accept somebody's simplistic answer to a complicated problem. And that's my thing. I've kind of almost settled it on myself to actually pursue, like if outside my music, I'm going to be more prone to become a clinical psychologist, because I like helping people. It's like 80 or 70% of the reason why I love music so much, and the reason why I love creating it, is because I want it to become a muse for people's help, or helping people. I guess that's what it is. I mean, sure, I get a lot of emotional excess out of creating music, and I get to pour myself into it, and I get to have a muse of myself being externalized in a different, not physical, because it becomes an abstract extension of myself, and everything that comes from me goes into my music, and that therefore, because I'm a human being and people can relate to each other through music, that music gets related to somebody else, and then they get, whatever emotion they get out of the music that I put into it, or whatever they interpret it to be. And that's why I say in a lot of my music that whoever listens to it, all interpretations and understandings of it are true. Like, obviously, if somebody listens to my music and they think, "Oh my God, this song definitely means that that the person who wrote this definitely wants to go out and kill people and himself," and it's like, I mean, sure, you can think of it that way, but at the same time, like, my own interpretation of my own music. I don't want to say that my interpretations of my own music is more important than yours because uh, well, okay, when somebody paints something, a lot of the main decision of an artist is to not so much have a reaction of the audience unless they're a performer. If they're a performer, then yeah, they're exactly going to go for that reactionary stance. Uh, but an artist, they're more likely to exude themselves into it. So that in that aspect, then the interpretation of the artist's own art is, I don't want to say more important, but it's on a grander scale. Like it's kind of like hierarchy, not a hierarchy. It's more like a pyramid of things that kind of constitute art. And the art for, the artist, and like here's performer and here's artist. The artist and the people that react to the art picture or whatever is the frame for the art, their interpretations are uh, are completely reactionary to their own emotions and their experiences in their lives. But the artist is behind the art, and it's one perception of it, you know, and all these other perceptions kind of create like a I don't want to say atmosphere, a not a G mode. That's not a word. Um, I don't want. I don't know how to choose a word for this, but the character, yeah, it becomes a character of itself, and that's exactly what the art of what people perceive is. It's a character, um, and it reflects off of itself onto whoever's perceiving it. But it's still the same for the person who's the artist, and it's not more important, but this is on a grander scale because it goes back to one person. It's one mind that created this entire character. Um, as weird as that sounds, there's more people on one side, and it should be regarded as grander than the one that's over here, and it's one that would be minor. But the reason why I say that the idea of the artist is grander than the majority of people who respond to it is because um, the artist is uh, the artist is the author of the art. So that has its own authority, but it's not like so, you know, dominant that the interpretations of other people is just irrelevant. It's not like that anyway. Um, so yeah, it's not on a grander scale, but it's definitely on it. I don't want to say that it's more important because because both of them lie around the same importance, but the function of the art, the artist and the perceptions of the art, both meanings of it are equal, but the functions of the both of them are different. If that makes any sense. So, and that's why someone who's an artist, um, their perception of their own art is extremely important, and it also kind of leads an interpretation towards the audience too, because the interpretation of an artist of its own art can somehow influence the reception of the people who get the art, if that makes any sense. Um, and this is completely different for performers. People, um, like if you're a musician and you actually perform, but you regard yourself as an artist, and that's fine. But the problem with being a musician and a performer and an artist is you have to do both of them at the same time, essentially, if that makes any sense. Unless you're doing some sort of classical thing, because if it's a classical atmosphere of people and things, then it's not regarded so much as a performance as it is a uh, a record play of a piece, if that makes any sense. The pianist behind a classical song isn't that the musician behind the song is the artist. It's that the musician is kind of the reaction towards a classical piece of music. And that performance of that kind of goes from the artist to the performer to the people, if that makes any sense. It goes through three different dimensions in that regard. So uh, and that's what makes performance so different, because when you're a performer you have to be expressive. You're like a dancer. If you're a performer, you have to kind of combine your skills and your talents along with being a dancer. And when I say dancer, I don't mean like actually dancing to the music, but you have to move and you have to react to the music in order to be, regarded as a performer. And that's why when people go see musicians play like a classical piece or an artistic exemplification of music, then the the exemplification of an artist playing and performing gives off a different reaction to the crowd, if that makes any sense. Um, One problem that I actually have with performers, that like exclusive performers, is that um, something strange is about it too. Like they downplay themselves and they assume that just because they're at a certain level of talent that they don't have to go any further. And I think that's I don't think that's so much of a pride thing. I think it's more so like an arrogance thing. Like, because when you get all that positive reinforcement from a crowd reacting to your music, or no, not the music, but it's reacting to you. That's because you are the main focus of it. Um, and I don't think that becomes narcissistic in a way. I think that becomes very egotistical. And when something becomes egotistical, it becomes self-centered, and because something becomes self-centered, it becomes bitter towards judgment and critiques, and it doesn't exactly know how to change after that. There's plenty of celebrities out there that exemplify this. If you follow, okay, so there's plenty of celebrities that I can name at the top of my head. They're I'm not saying this to judge them either way. I'm saying this as an exemplification of their behavior and what it gives off to whoever their audience or their crowd is. Video bloggers, people like Jake Paul and Logan Paul. Then there's Tana Mojo. Then uh, there's Rice Gum. There's who else? There's Dan the Meme Man. There's I forget his last name. Something Patty. He's a friend of Dan the Meme Man. And it kind of gets a little bit more extreme as the time goes on. I don't know about Tana Mojo. She's actually gotten better. I don't dislike Tana Mojo. I don't think that she's untalented or she's a bad person or anything. TanaCon it was terrible because I think that she was the one that got screwed over. After watching the Shane Dawson documentary, I think my perception of Tana Mojo changed after that, because she she showed a lot of remorse and regret for disappointing so many people that relied on her, and I think that's important. Like I think that should definitely be empathized with. Lele Pons, that's another one. Lele Pons is another performer in that regard. Um, Deji and whatever his name, KSI, those are other people that do the same thing. PewDiePie is a performer, but he's a performer in the regard that he's not the fool, like the archetype of the fool, but he's more so like he's like the reckless solo hero that's off to fight off the dragon, and the dragon would probably be the media that kind of slanders and defamates his name all the time, accusing him of a lot of things like being a Nazi, etc. So yeah, that's my perception of performers. Oh, that's not my perception of performers. Performers in the regard of like celebrity singers and celebrity basketball player. Well, not basketball players, but any athlete. I think that athletes and the major play, they're definitely performers. They're not. They're performers in the regard that they're good at their craft and they're doing it not for their own game, but they're doing it because of a certain love for like a universe of set rules that kind of constitute how to survive. I guess that makes any sense. That's basically what games are. Games are a separate universe of which people create a set of rules, and those set of rules kind of dictate where the game goes. And based on how skilled you are, that kind of constitutes where you are in the playing field and how well your team performs. So there's that. Uh, musical performers, like all the YouTubers and pop artists that I mentioned, they're people that kind of. Excuse me for a second. Um, yeah, the people that kind of perform musically, they're an exemplification of something else that had an idea, and a lot of the times that kind of comes from the company behind them. I mean, not the company, more so corporation. The corporation that goes behind the person that's a performer, that in itself is the artist. I guess that's like symbolically, it's the artist. It's not literally the artist because there's thousands and maybe hundreds of people that go behind one song that gets a hit. You know, uh, so it's a team effort in that part, and that team effort kind of a lot of and it's strange that that many people can be behind a song and so many people and that's well the strange thing is that it's made for the masses in our culture, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that's a general thing. People uh, they don't completely understand that yeah, pop music is for it's for the majority of the population. It's not meant to be a piece of art. Like it can be a piece of art in some regard, and it can be artistic, and it can have a deep meaning, and it can touch the lives of many people. But um, the main point behind it isn't to be a piece of art. I guess that's what it would be. Um, well, that might be inaccurate. If something is a piece of art in pop music or something popular in general, then it would. I mean, it still incites a reaction from people. So yes, it is art. Like definitionally, it is art. But that doesn't mean it's you know on a psychological and individualistic level that that art is constituted as high quality art. And it's strange to not call it high quality art because when something is high quality, you expect it to be very, very high end, and the quality of it is reflected into the product. So, uh, if say for example you're a painter. Well, we'll just stay on the same subject. We'll use music. If you're a musician and you use low quality instruments and amplifiers and electronic equipment, then you can expect a low quality production. But that doesn't mean the production is an impediment on the art itself, because a lot of the time, low quality production creates a really interesting dynamic in it. So if something is in low quality, that can reflect on how the artist views themselves. If the quality of, I mean, that's just one interpretation of many other interpretations, but uh, I'm using this as an example. Like if an artist uses a low quality production set, then that kind of reflects on the artist's perception of himself. But if that makes any sense, not like if it's something out of the artist's control, maybe that's a different kind of perception and an interpretation. But if somebody has an already high end, well, not high end, but a regardingly pretty decent studio, or except a production set, I guess you could say, and they make the conscious the conscious uh, portrayal to create something with low quality production, uh, and that goes in line with their high quality skills and etc. So because of that, that kind of creates a cool dynamic, because that makes the music of it more relatable in my sense. Now, and vice versa for high end production, then that would kind of derive itself on a derive itself on a what would it be? It would definitely be a conscious overlay of ideas of the person that is creating the music. So, like, say for example, it's in vice versa. Like, if somebody has a high end equipment and they use high quality production, um, then that kind of sets a view of perception of the artist sees himself or herself. I don't discriminate. um, so yeah, if but if they use low quality production, well, not a low quality production. If they use a low quality artistic sense to it, I guess that could be uh, in a subjective term. Whatever somebody decides is high quality or low quality artistic value, then unless it's unless artistic value can be actually quantifiable in some scientific sense, then yeah, we can have a debate about that all day long. um, but let's assume for a moment that it is quantifiable. But if somebody uses a low quality writing and artistic sense to it, then that creates a strange dynamic too. Because if something which is used in high quality equipment and a high quality skillful artist, uh, but the actual artisan behind it, uh, like the secondary artisan behind the performer. Sorry, I didn't mean to call him a. Like, I'm not okay. I'm also not saying that performers aren't artists. Like, I'm not saying that at all. Like, that's completely ridiculous to assume. But let's assume that the performer here is not the actual like the genuine artist behind it. Let's just assume that the performer is the muse behind the artist, but the artist or artisans behind it, because there's usually more than one in this kind of instance. Sorry, that creates something like that. You're going to have a very high quality production and have a very terrible exemplification of that production. A lot of songs that kind of rely on that is Gangnam Style, for one of them. Gangnam Style, Despacito, Justin Bieber's Baby. There's What Does the Fox Say, or something like that. Plenty of high quality songs that have a very bland and very, low quality artistic value to it. Yeah, that kind of, and the reason why that's easy to detect in most people is, I mean, yeah, you can like something like that, but you can't love it. Well, I mean, you can love it. You can say, hey, I love the song, but after a week later, when the song's played on the radio every single day, you're going to want to shoot yourself the next time it comes on the radio. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. So that's why I use that analogy. And if you don't want to be so verbal, I won't say shoot yourself, but you want to, like, smack yourself in the face or something with a bat or whatever. Something, that just kind of like distracts you from the pain of hearing that terrible sound again. And I know how that feels. So there's that. So yeah, that's kind of the interesting dynamic behind, artisans, performers, and high quality and low quality production. So yeah, there's that. I never really got to what I want to do with my life. So assuming music for me just kind of, it ends up just, being something that I'm passionate about, and it can be a side accumulation of profit. if it really does have to come down to it, well, actually, I kind of really want to do it. I want to become a clinical psychologist. I did say that. I did say that. I think I said that at the beginning of this strange video, which is, I mean, I talk about random stuff like all the time, so it's weird, and it's ramblings of an INFJ type stuff. So yeah. Anyway, I hope. I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid about any of this, and I'm just kind of rambling about nothings. And it's strange to, just completely exert your mental state and emotional state about things. So yeah. What else did I want to talk about? I talked about I talked about that for about half an hour. So, like, if somebody wants to, tell me that I don't have interesting ideas, I mean, fight me. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, I'm joking. If you want to have a discussion about this, put my I'll put my kick in the description or some sort of ways to communicate with me on a personal level. I'll leave it down there, and we can video chat about stuff, and we can have a nice dialogue and conversation. That's kind of what I love to do. I love to have conversation with people. I love to have meaningful, deep conversations with people. I don't like small talk. I really don't. Like, it's one thing to say like, "Oh my God, the weather is pretty beautiful today." Like, and it's like the weather's nice. And how are you doing, Jennifer? How's your baby? Like, yeah. Like, I mean, I get small talk, but it's like it's just the first level of a person. You know, I really admire the deeper levels of a person. I really love the deeper meanings of people. I love to see people exert a certain amount of, I don't want to say pride, but more so, I love to see people exert the genuinity of their personality and their true selves. That's what I love to do. I love to see that in people. I really do. And a lot of times, like, I guess I become like I overexert myself in people. Like if I just meet somebody